Hello, one and all, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble interviewer, Jordan Brown, and with me for the very first time is Ash Schimkus. Say hi, Ash Schimkus.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me. I was so excited to get a chance to talk to you about Dimension 20 at large, but really about the bear turtle that y'all built for this incredible season. But before we dive into that, it looks like you've been with so you are a model maker for Dimension 20.
Yes.
And it looks like you started during the Ravening War and then through Dungeons and Drag Queens, Mentopolis, and now Burrow's End. Is that right?
Yes.
Cool. So what brought you to Dimension 20? I feel like it must have been Raven on account of the collegiate background that you share. That feels like it couldn't have been a coincidence of a theater person who went to Ithaca College also ends up at Dimension 20. Can you talk about how you got there?
I had been living in LA for a month, or not a month, a couple months at that point, starting a career in fabrication. And Raven and Jesse, I went to school with both of them. So I was a freshman when Jesse Heron was a senior and when Raven Bartlett was a junior. And so we've seen each other before. We're already friends. And then Raven was like, hey, we need more regular mono builders. Is this something you'd be interested in? Because we did it in college together. And I was like, yeah, sure. And now it's a full-time niche for me because of this show, which is great.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, and I know I saw you had a lot of really cool stuff on your website, especially live theater stuff that seems to translate really, really well to specifically Dimension 20, but sort of that those maps of D&D. Were you familiar with Dimension 20 or D&D before you joined, or was this the world you were about to enter very different than what you expected?
I definitely wasn't in the D&D world at all. I definitely have seen clips because the show's hilarious on TikTok, but I never was a fan before being brought on. So it definitely was a brand new world for me, and luckily enough, I was working with friends, so it was a very good environment to sort of be oh, well, we also have this game going on, and we'd like you to meet this person, and let's start this game, and it's been fun learning it through working on the show as well.
Yeah, that's
learning in reverse.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I mean, I can't. Having not started in the D&D world, the idea that you started working with Matt Mercer and then Brennan and then Abria, the trinity of DMs in that world. It's I mean, a testament to how good your work is, I should say, that you get to do this, but obviously a thing that people like myself are both impressed and jealous of. I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone about, because Dungeons and Drag Queens and the Ravening War, obviously those maps were super cool. Everything that y'all did on those, but I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about building the table for Mentopolis, because it was so different to what anything D20 had done before. What your kind of role in that was, since there were no minis that season, but the table itself was so interactive and important.
Yeah, it was a really quick turnaround. We got the wheel outsourced fabricated, but all the buildings we made within a span of a week. We sort of kit bashed tons of buildings, doing tons of trips to the train shack in Burbank. I don't know if that's a plug, but can be. Doing a lot of just mashing buildings together and 3D printed parts, and it was a big whirlwind trying to get it all together, but it was really cool seeing it all come together. And I was responsible for the sort of aging paint job-ish of the like whole wheel, whole sort of board, and then um, some of the buildings as well. I think specifically more the green and blue buildings were done by me and like a fabrication team of like 5 people
Mhm.
within a week. But like the mechanisms like that like come out to each player, like that was a group effort, like getting it in at the, like, you know, when we needed it done, we're all gluing it, we're all like touching it up. People are gluing, I'm going in, since I'm like in charge of paint, I'm like going in and touching up the glue, and it's like needing to dry like overnight. But yeah, it was a lot of fun having it sort of come together. um Literally building like a city in a week.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, like, kudos to you because I mean, a thing that is so wildly important in a noir story is that visual element, and the board was stunning, and the city was stunning. So, I mean, well done. And I remember seeing a lot of those, like, I mean, not a lot, but some of the behind the scenes where literally, like, you're like dropping the ball, the like tokens, whatever they were called, down those pipelines, and be like, oh, that one got stuck, and I can see that, like, especially if that is happening in a week, how frantic that must have been. But I mean, obviously, it turned out incredibly well.
Yeah, like it was a lot of trial and error with that element of the board, and that was something that Rick really wanted from day one, was that interactive part of it, making it sort of go to the player, um, drawing them in a little bit in a different way, I think was really cool. And Rick's a very visual guy, so like it's kind of like he really is in like that room working with us, like especially for that season of like, this building needs to go here, this building needs to go here, and sort of just like it really is coming from his mind, like in the moment. um but yeah, he's a great guy to work with in that
Yeah,
sort of situation.
yeah, yeah. So then diving into this season, Burrow's End,
Mhm.
um, and specifically the bear. Uh, I know you were responsible for some of the major organs inside the bear,
Mhm.
including the liver that held a colony of chipmunks inside of it. Could you talk about sort of, I mean, I guess sort of how that got presented to you, as well as like what your process was for building such a unique housing location for enemies.
Yeah, no, I was super excited when they gave that to me as like sort of my like assignment for the project. Cuz I'm more of a painter than a sculptor, so I was like, this is a challenge and I'm really excited. Or like at the time I was more, and like Kelsey sort of like guided me a lot. They kind of had this like really gross like picture of a liver right in front of like my station, and then I just kind of like had to look at that and go off that. But the whole like it opens like Polly Pocket would say, and like we have to be able to see in through it and like make it look gory, but then it also like can't be soft like the other ones. It has to be like a shell, but then like look not like it. So like it was a lot of like back and forth with like finish and how it's gonna blend as far as looks, and just a lot of like working things as the whole board is coming together, because Sadie and Rachel are working on other organs as well as I'm working on some organs. So it's kind of like we all have to make sure that these look cohesive, and that like emphasizes that surprise of that liver opening up, because you don't I made sure to have like the seam as close to the bottom as possible, so that way you can't see it from like where they're sitting, and that way it's like whoa, it, like, you know, and we got that and it was great.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned to Kelsey, when I saw the bear, I saw the holes and I thought, oh, they're going to go inside. I still didn't expect the bear to open up. I certainly didn't expect there to then be like elements are coming out and like the liver opens. Yeah, I know I saw on. I mean, as of the day we're recording this, you posted some behind the scenes stuff where you're painting, I believe it was a kidney,
Yeah.
with just a picture of a kidney in front of you. Um, I, I assume not like work you've done before, in terms of like, here's a picture of an organ, paint an organ. Or is this like old hat for you at this point?
I think like it definitely was like I wasn't given any like I was like, oh, Burrows, and I bet it's gonna be like cute, like like basically Kelsey separated us into teams, and so it was like this team is doing one board and then the other team's doing the other major board. And so like it was me with Rachel and Sadie, who I'm working with for the first time on this season, and it was great. But like we're all working on this, like being like, okay, how can we tackle this? Because it's so huge and so detailed. And so, yeah, it kind of just, yeah, it was way different than what I was expecting,
Yeah.
but in the best way possible. Like I got to be like, I'm making bear organs this week, and this is my job, and like, how many people could say that? Not many, hopefully.
I can't.
Um,
You might be the only one, other than
yeah,
your two team members, who can say I'm making bear organs for my job this week.
yeah. And like currently, I'm a stop motion model builder for Mattel, which is like toys and like, and it's like very like, and I'm like, whoa, this is very contrasting from working on that season. And in general, like Dimension 20 is like so varied and like kind of gritty, which I love it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think. Yeah, I can. Well, I mean, the trailer was cut together so well that I don't think anyone was. I think, well, I shouldn't say no one was surprised by the bear. Everyone was surprised by the bear. No one was surprised that the season was a bit gnarlier than I think probably original pitch of like it's about stoats in the forest. I know. So I assume like you're not probably not on set when like actual play is happening, and that you've moved on to other projects at that point. Um, but at least like word is getting back to you of like, hey, they reacted how you wanted, cast reacted how you wanted to react to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just nodding.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but I sort of I mean I'm just gonna guess that you watch the show. It's fine if you don't. I know some people are like, no, I can't watch my own work. But if you've seen at least the clip, then what's it like to see like Brennan hold up like a trophy, your liver that you've worked so hard on, and just like that? I feel like that has to be like a very proud moment of like, yeah, I crushed this. I crushed the assignment.
No, it definitely was like so surreal seeing him hold it and have that reaction because yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. Nobody had told me. We actually got together the week that that episode came out, like all of us that worked on the season, and like had like a night together watching it. And so it was sweet to like have everyone that I worked on it in the room with me, and like really all of us having that like reaction to seeing our work for the first time. Um and yeah, I was not expecting like it to be its own like little like skit that like kind of went off of it, and like him being like it's like an Oscar, and like he's like looking at it like it's like a baby, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, fully he went into like bit janitor mode of like, this is my trophy from this season. Do you know? I'm assuming that obviously like it had to go into mini shoots afterwards. I don't know. Do you know who has the liver now? Is it still somewhere in studio, or did Brennan get to take it home?
I do not know where it went. It it might be included in auction, but
Okay.
that was just what is was rumored to me. I don't know if that like is a part of it, but I mean, I hope somebody gets to keep it because it's a gnarly piece.
Yeah, yeah, and sort of in that same vein, then I assume like the getting called out specifically. It's one of the things that I really like about Dimension 20 is it feels like a lot of other, not a lot of other like actual play shows, but just shows in general, Rick Perry would get the credit for that end of like list, right? But like in that adventuring party after the bear, like they handed Brennan a piece of paper and it had all of your names on it that had worked on it, and like went down by like organ and other pieces of it to be like, Ash, you nasty. How I assume that also felt very good to get that like specific call out along with the rest of your teammates. But what was it like to get called nasty by Brennan Lee Mulligan?
I was like, this is in character. But I was like, oh my god, that's so cool, because I do a call out, like every season of like who did what, and like I think that's really cool. Like it definitely. I've been working in art department now for a while, and like it is very different to like be specifically like thanked and like appreciated for like the work that's put in. So the fact that it was done that way though was so much more enjoyable to watch. Like, and just like it's just like, we see each other. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, kindred spirits. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I think we all saw Brendan's face, and I talked to Kelsey and Raven about this of like Brendan's face in like that moment of like, oh, we're doing this now. Like the arms race that Abria has launched at Dimension 20 every season that she comes in. It just feels so fun as a fan to get to watch even the people that are there all the time be shocked by what you all are producing for them. Is really really cool. So I know you said you that was sort of your primary thing this season was the bear, sort of separated out from the rest of the season. Um, is there? And I assume did you work on junior year? Not trying to like pull spoilers out of you. I'm just hoping that you're still working on things with them because your work is so good.
I'm not working on the season after.
Okay, but there is an upcoming season that you are on. Great.
No, this current season was my last season,
Okay.
with my latest season, I should say.
Yeah.
And then there's one season after that, and then that's when they sort of end production, and then they're starting production again the beginning of next year. So that's kind of how they work. Is
Yeah.
like a few months of production, and then there's a big gap, and then they do it all like straight through. So like when you mentioned like have I seen like some of it, I like we were building another season while Drag Race was being filmed, and they put a monitor like in our workspace, so we like watched it in real time. We've like seen it uncut, like every part of it. So like it's like if you when I was brought on in like a longer contract, I would watch it in real time while I'm working, which is cool too. But yeah, I had another contract starting, so I had to take a season break, but hopefully they'll bring me back for a 5th season.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Yeah, I think everyone. Yeah. How could they not? The kid, excuse me, the liver, obviously also the kidney, but the liver is the trophy of it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what it's sort of like to. You mentioned working on other art departments, and this does feel different. Does this also feel different in terms of sort of a fan community that is sort of following like this behind the scenes work as well? Of like you get to post this stuff on Instagram, and like people like me slide into your DMs to be like, "Hey, you want to come chat with me about this?" What is that? What is that experience like for you?
It definitely is like so like comforting and gratifying, because I don't know, my goal at the end of the day is to make like art that connects with people, and like sometimes doing it for like mass like corporate sort of television and film, it can get sort of like lost, and like I'm a part of it, and like that's what matters, and like it is very true and why I love it. But like it is so cool to make art for a community that cares so much about it, and that like is so curious about it. and like also the fact that it's for just like D&D is just created for people to enjoy and like escape a little bit, and like that in itself being the premise of the show, of like just people having a good time and playing a game and like being together, and then having a community that also feels that way, and then also the work environment being that way, I think altogether just makes it very rewarding all around.
Yeah. I mean, I can certainly speak for the fans. Every single time I've like gotten a new person to say yes, which I think everyone I've asked has said yes, which feels great. But every time I'm like, I get into like Discord, I'm like, you'll never guess who just said yes, and everyone's like, yay! Like everyone is so excited to hear more about like what you all do. Uh,
Mhm.
um, and sort of in that vein, I know we've talked about like making the liver, but what sort of, I mean, for the people who are really deep in this, what are the paints that you're using? Like, how are you building that out to get that texture on there that
Mhm.
looks like an organ, but can be like popped off as hard as solid, and like, but still has that same interior quality that the rest of the bear had.
Yeah, so I made it majority out of epoxy clay, and I made a foam mold, so like what the inside of the livers like all puffed up would be in the space that they need. I made that out of foam and then like balls of tinfoil, because I made the mold, and then Rick Perry was like, make it bigger, 1 inch bigger this way, 2 inches bigger this way. And I'm like, okay, all right, this is getting, which is funny because like the liver is like 1.5 times the size of like a normal liver, so it's technically not a mini. It's like an exaggeration. And I was like, this is getting, and we were like reading like organ facts and like bear facts like the whole entire time, because we were like, okay, we're gonna learn something if we're gonna make this thing. And like, so I'm like, this is not even standard size anymore. Like it needs the playing space. We gotta add more tinfoil to this side, and like, and so like it was constantly me being like, bigger? Are you sure? This is getting crazy. And like, so then once we decided on the size, I then sculpted over it, and then I like cut where it's gonna open while it was still like before it hardens, because it usually takes like 3 hours to harden. And then left it overnight, had that shell base, um, and then most of it is like hand sculpted, like the interior, exterior, those little lumps are like rocks that I took from like making the DM screen, and like covering them in the clay and then making them look like those bumps, like the bigger ones. And then I like coated it with like um, foam glue mixed with water, and then that creates those like little like cookie like parts, and then those harden. And then that's pretty much to it. To like the sculpt, it was just majority epoxy clay, and then with the paints I used regular model paints, and then did a bunch of ink washes, and then so many coats of like high gloss varnish to get it to like look like it's wet. Um, but yeah, that's majority of what it's made of.
That's super cool. It reminds me of, this would be a very quick story. In the Lord of the Rings, like behind the scenes, the mace that the Witch King uses is like hugely silly. And I remember Peter Jackson in the behind the scenes, they said like they kept making it bigger, and Peter Jackson kept saying it has to be bigger. And so finally they made one that was like comically silly, too big, and he was like, "That's the right size." And they were like, "Oh, we did this as like a joke," and then they saw it in the movie, and they're like, "No, he was right." But yeah, like that's very funny to be like, just keep making it bigger because it has to have this many chipmunks living inside of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know Rick also. I think Rick mentioned that like the size of the bear is, I mean, like a bus in like terms of like what the stoats would be to it, and had to like have the conversation with Abria of like, well, some things can be bigger in this world because of things that will be revealed, kind of stuff. So yeah, like maybe the blue has made the bear's liver grow
Mhm.
extra big. That's very fun though. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny because like they mentioned like when they like pulled out the like top of the liver, they're like, man, like he's an alcoholic. Like he's been through it. You need to go to the hospital. And like that's what Rick told me. He's like, this liver needs to look infected, diseased. I want to come by and say like it's gross, like it's nasty. Like he like if basically when we're building liver, if Rick comes by and he's like disgusting, it's like okay, you did a good job. And so like that's sort of like the whole point of it. Like I had like diseased livers all up as my references. Like he was like yellower, like more red, like make it look even like sickly. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, Kelsey mentioned something that like Rick would come by and be like, "That's no really what the inside of a bear looks like. It should like be whiter and fleshier." And like they're like, "Okay, Rick." And I'm curious, what's the toll on the psyche of having a bunch of pictures of diseased liver at your workstation for presumably several days at least? Are you doing okay? Just a quick check in.
Yeah, it definitely felt like Dexter vibes.
Yeah.
Like it was. There's also no windows in that shop, so it was definitely Dexter like.
That's a perfect description. Come work at Dimension 20. Dexter vibes. That's so good. I feel like probably that a lot of what you did on the Ravening War in terms of grossness and sort of like like food, but like that organic component to everything probably translated really well then into building organs for the bear. Because I think you were involved in sort of those underground final layers of the Ravening War, if like pictures served right. Did that? I guess did that also? Are you basically building your skill set at Dimension 20 of like, oh, I can keep getting grosser? Is that sort of the trajectory that you're seeing?
um, I mean, I hope so. I hope so. Because for Ravening War, I was mostly doing paint. I did the painting, so Casey was the one that did the sculpts that are shown on my Instagram, and then we kind of like double teamed it along with Shane. And so like it was cool to like get into like sort of like you're saying like elevating the grossness, but also like being able to like sculpt it and like get your hands in there. Like the video I posted of the kidney today, like that's me making the like appendage strings that like come from a kidney, like the urethra, out of like silicone. And so like it definitely has does look like a trajectory for
Yeah.
sure. And you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, they like will let us do more and get into a deeper thing. But
Yeah.
for sure.
Matt, yeah, and I think I can't imagine that it slows down for them. It feels like it is just like it can't ever like you have to keep topping it. But one of the things that I think is also really interesting in terms of like talking about that connective tissue is all of those like those connecting points are potentially places that the players are going to use to move between things, which also must be a really interesting challenge because you're not just building the interior of a bear. You're building the interior of a bear that is specifically designed for people to be pretending to move along the inside of it. Is there extra thought, I suppose, that goes into? I mean, obviously, you talked about like the liver had to be bigger because it needed that space, but like that thought of like, all right, well, this connective tissue has to go here so that like if they want to get up to the spine, there is a way there, or like if they want to move through the intestines. I know there was like the potential for a butthole entry that sadly did not get used. What a sentence. But like, how does that like? How different does that inform like just like model making when you are like, oh, but also it has to be practically efficient for tiny miniatures that are going to be running around inside there.
Yeah, for sure. Because like the whole thing has to be dotted. So it's like, how are the dots going to lay on this, and like how does that affect the players is definitely at the forefront of the entire building process. Um, and I can't fully speak to like the shell of the bear because that's mostly was Rachel and Sadie's work. But I did like we kind of like try to shift things around together since like it's all of our work combined.
Mhm.
And like it was like, oh, like if the liver's going to be facing this way, then like the intestines need to go up sort of this way, because then like they need to be able to like go down this way. And so like there definitely was a thought process, and like how many ribs are there, like is it realistic or is it too cluttered, is it enough space for them to jump from, like is definitely a part of it. And like happy it all worked out and it all looked like how you would think it would look. It's definitely not like atomically correct, but it's like game atomically
Yeah,
correct. And
it's
like that's
it's the blue correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's super cool. I don't know. Were you around ever to see any? I know like you saw cast reaction when sort of we all saw it, but like any like Abria Carlos reaction of what that looked like when you first got to display it. Were you around for those meetings?
I wasn't there when they first saw it, but I was sent photos of them like reacting to it. And it's always so cute to see those photos or the videos, like um especially like not even this season, but like the drag show season where like or the drag season where like it was like them interacting with it for the first time, even not just like in the show, but like having that additional reaction is always cool too. But yeah, I always get sent like a little snippet or like
Nice.
reaction photos, and they're very
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the really cool things about Dungeons and Drag Queens was that the thing that I love about that season is it was so approachable for new players because it was not only like obviously four incredible improvisers, well, five incredible improvisers with Brennan, but like four great improvisers sitting around that table, but also playing D&D really for the first time
Mhm.
together, and it felt like so approachable for people who had never played or had never watched TTRPGs before. It felt like a really cool entry space, and like that, that final, I guess, only battle map, but the battle map of that season, along with the very cool um, neutral board, really I felt like added to that excitement of new players getting to see like what all you could do, which is really really cool. And I just want to, I don't know, thank you for making cool things. Like I didn't even get a chance to talk to Rick about this, but like like making, I know your model making, and so this was probably Shane that was making the mini of like a familiar that didn't exist at the beginning of the season, like getting to do that kind of thing. Is there stuff that you can think of where it is that like, oh, they just mentioned something last minute that I need to get my hands on? Or usually by the time they're filming, are you kind of like, all right, my stuff is all done, I'm safe to like move on to our next season?
Yeah, that's kind of is how it is because we have to be, you know, hands off of it before, like usually the night before that they shoot it at latest. And so like um with some parts that can be more interactive, there's usually one of us at least, or like that like go and clean the table while they're explaining it, or like somebody's explaining the table to them. um so yeah, the model shop is involved. I personally am mostly like a sculptor and painter, so like I'm not as like in the room per se. I know for Dungeons and Drag Queens I was a huge part of doing the DM board, so like with Kelsey, and so like we um were there a little bit, seeing them come in and like being like, oh, like making sure the sight lines are good and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things about the DM screen, is it has those incredibly important things sort of placed typically just like at the center of them. And for like Dungeons and Drag Queens and for Burrow's End, they are things that aren't, and not mystery. Well, I mean, Burrow's End definitely, but like Dungeons and Dragons, even like that, like the Temple of Death, like at the center of all of that, is still like a thing that you're like, well, we're not going to tell you right away that that's what there. And it's so interesting to me to think like it is the main focus that we are looking at. Well, and whenever Brennan is talking and on camera, and we still like you still have to think of like, okay, but we can't give it away right away. And sort of all of that work that goes into that. But I'll also say I know that at New York City Comic Con there were two people who did like full Brennan cosplays. That like I don't know if you saw pictures of them, but like had like his striped shirt on. But they had one had in the Crown of Candy DM screen, another had the Eggford Academy DM screen that they clearly built themselves. And I talked to Rick and Kelsey about it, and they had said like we zoomed in on those, and I think they used the same kits that we like. They did the same kit bashing and everything. Like they really put these together. And what is it? I mean, how does it feel that there is a real distinct possibility that at some time in the future, someone at a cosplay is going to be in like Brennan drag with a DM screen that you helped build, like the Dungeons and Drag Queens screen as part of their cosplay? How does that feel to know that like your work and now presumably livers and kidneys and things as well, but like your work is going to get like taken into home games or into cosplay? How what does that feel like?
No, that feels great that like people like not only want to know more but pay attention in such excruciating detail to stuff. And like it's also cool because like I had so much fun making it, so seeing somebody make it too, I'm like, oh my god, they must have had so much
Yeah.
fun making it, or at least I would hope so. So it's like, I don't know, seeing that sort of joy of making something and appreciating it is really cool.
Yeah, when I talked to Raven about it, they said that they see people who make like things that they have made and they on Instagram, and they're just like, I want to be your friend.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cool. And like, yeah, I don't know. There's, I think one of the things that I love about the D20 community is there is that sense of community, and sort of like not collaboration is not the right word, but excitement over like these kinds of details. That like you would sit down with me, but not only that, that like there are people out there who are going to like ravenously consume this interview to be like, I want all of those details. And it feels, I hope it feels special to you. It feels very special to me that I get to be in a very weird place where I get to ask you cool questions about this cool work that you do. Um,
Yeah, for sure. Like I think like I obviously think very highly of D20 cuz like in general it's a great work environment that they have, and like it is like a like feels family like, or like I'm just making stuff with my friends because I am. And so it's like, and we still all keep in touch and like, and so it's like, it does, and that translates through the work, I think, too. And like, or like the community also translates back to us. And so everything just feels very community fulfilled and connected. And so, yeah, it's a rewarding thing all around from every angle.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. If people want to go check out some of your cool behind the scenes stuff, where can they find you on the internet?
I have an Instagram, uh, A Schimkus, but like not just an A, it's like A. I'm kidding.
I'll put up text on the screen.
Yeah, my last name's complicated, but you know, or my name Ash Schimkus. You could look it up probably, but I mostly post my BTS content on my Instagram.
Cool. Ash, thank you so much for joining me. This was so wonderful. I hope any future season that you're on, which I hope are a lot, you'll come back and chat with me more because I will have questions every season for you. Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing.
Yes, thank you so much. You're so kind and passionate about the show. Really appreciate the energy. It's great.
Thank you.